Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is Sunday, January 16th of 2022. It is time for Sunday Night Magic. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for those of you who are joining me tonight. It's going to be interesting live stream, I suppose. So yeah, we got a couple of viewers and we just started off. This is awesome. I apologize for being out for I'm going to say what 3 weeks now. So it's really good to, see hear and see everyone again. Hi Ron, good evening. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. This one's gonna be, I think, more of a personal rant, really, to start the year. It's just gonna be strange, but you know what? I wanted to cover something that I thought would be very interesting for myself. So, you know what? Without further ado, let me jump into the topic. And for anyone that would like to share, comment, or add on to the conversation. This is a live stream. I will be going over the comments and I will be sharing some of them. So I would really appreciate your input. Otherwise, if you are watching a recording of this from the Variable Play Network, drop a comment. If you have a suggestion for any other show or topic that you think that we should cover, I would gladly appreciate that. So without further ado, our topic tonight, I just wanted to get something off my chest. I was just like kind of thinking and mulling over about one of Magic's most important topics, and I just came up with so many terrible examples. So tonight we are talking about my top 10 terrible planeswalkers in Magic the Gathering. So, some rules. This has nothing to do with Commander. This doesn't have anything to do with any format. This is strictly the Planeswalkers. And I am going to be excluding any Planeswalkers that were printed in the Planeswalker decks because they are objectively worse. They are powered down. They cost like 6 mana. And these are meant as like introductory products and should not reflect what planeswalkers can actually do. So set that crap aside. We focus mainly on the planeswalkers from main sets. And okay, fine, we can even throw in some of the auxiliary sets. I think there are some that are going to be covered here. But primarily, any planeswalker is really free game here, just as long as it is in the set printings and none of those planeswalker ones. No joke or unglued or unhinged planeswalkers either. Like we're going with playable here. But I think the playable has air quotes because you have to be a masochist to want to play these. So let me go ahead and get started. This is 10 planeswalkers that I have chosen from all of Magic the Gathering's history as to date. So as of January 16, 2022. There are going to be more planeswalkers, and I'm pretty sure some are going to suck. It just happens. But there's also going to be some amazing ones. And to give everyone context, for those of you who are not familiar with the concept, so Magic the Gathering was originally meant as a card game pitting you as a planeswalker against another opponent across the table. So you were dueling mages or dueling planeswalkers. Okay, and then as they progressed forward, they started making characters in the story into the planeswalkers. So they had names and backstories. So it wasn't really more about you and your opponent anymore. It was more of you like sort of role playing as these planeswalkers. And then they became playable characters in the game. This was introduced in the Lorwyn block and has every set moving forward has included planeswalkers. I think on an average now every set introduces at least 2 to 3 planeswalkers every set. So I did a count a while ago, and when I was setting up the list, I think including the planeswalkers and no variant art and stuff, that it's close to like 200 planeswalkers at this point. So there are a lot of characters in Magic the Gathering, but some are repeats. Several planeswalkers have multiple prints, so you might see a couple of them show up more than once here. With that, let's get started. This is in no particular order except for number 1. Number one is really, really bad, and I'm pretty sure if you're a Magic the Gathering player, you know who the worst Planeswalker is. But instead, like let's start from the bottom, and these are my personal top 10 terrible Planeswalkers. This is not a definitive list. This is subjective. Okay, this is my personal biases. If you don't see a Planeswalker that you think should be on the list, comment. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. So let's begin with number 10. Number 10 is Sarcan the Mad. So Sarcan the Mad is pretty much I'm trying to remember which version. I believe Sarcan started as red green and then progressed into this black red version. So this one is one of the very first planeswalkers that they created that is borderline suicidal. Okay, well, hence he carries the name Sarkan the Mad. He is a 5 to cast planeswalker that has 7 loyalty. Okay, his first ability costs no loyalty whatsoever. Reveal the top card of your library and put it in your hand. Awesome, it's a draw engine. Who wouldn't want a draw engine? Sarkan the Mad deals damage to himself equal to that card's converted mana cost. So if you show the land, nothing happens. It costs 0. If it was anything else, that 7 gets gravely reduced really fast. If it was a card that you really needed, like, oh, I need a board wipe, oh, I need to go get my ad nauseum, you pretty much killed your planeswalker. Okay? So he basically hurts himself, and you could probably maybe get, unless you're really lucky with a lot of library and top deck manipulation, you could probably keep him alive for maybe 3 draws, but you're paying 5 mana for it. Like, is it really worth it? Next, -2, target creature's controller sacrifices it. Great, he can remove creatures. Then that player puts a 5/5 red dragon creature token into the battlefield that has flying. You could get rid of an important creature, but giving your opponent a 5/5 red flying dragon almost guarantees that it is going to hit Sarkhan the Mad and kill him. That's 7. You took -2 to use this ability. When you pass the turn to your opponent, he swings for 5, this thing is dead. So you paid 5 to remove a creature and give your opponent a 5/5 flyer. That's objectively bad. And then finally, his supposed ultimate, the last ability that every planeswalker gets is supposed to be their ultimate ability. -4. Each dragon creature you control deal damage equal to its power to target player. So just a single target. So I'm not talking format again here. In Commander, that's pretty bad because you only got one. You can only target one opponent. In a one-on-one setting, that might be pretty powerful. So you could use this sort of like an end game shot that if you have a bunch of dragons, so he's really like a last blast to your opponent, but it still costs 5, which is really at that point. If you are playing dragons, they on average what cost at least 5 or 6 mana. You should have already been swinging at your opponent's face. So my number 10 goes to this card because by design, I think that they could have maybe made him cost cheaper, or at least modified some of these abilities that it just didn't work against you. The last ability is nice to have, but I have never seen anyone use it because by the time that you would have a significant amount of dragons, you've probably already won the game. So, eh, again, terrible, terrible. Now let's move to the next one. Number 9, I am turning over to one of the very first planeswalkers that they tried, like an alternate version or a tribal version. So the original planeswalker for green was Garruk Wildspeaker, and they transitioned them out and they wanted to introduce a new green planeswalker. In comes Nisha Ravine. Am I pronouncing that Ravine? But okay, they never really clarified how to pronounce her last name, but it's just Nisa. So Nisa is one of the planeswalkers that they introduced that really has a specific card pairing. So her ability is she's 4 to cast and only has 2 loyalty. She's not going to last at all. She's like one swing away from dying. Plus 1, search your library for a card named Nisa's Chosen, which is just like I think a 2/3 elf, and put it in the battlefield. So she gets up to 3 loyalty and you get a blocker. Okay. Next one is plus 1 again. Gain 2 life for each elf you control. Life gain isn't that important, really, if you think about it. And then the ultimate is -7. Search your library for any number of elf creature cards and put them into the battlefield. That's pretty strong. But you're going to have to at least take 6 turns to build up to this point if you even want Nisa alive. Or even just to just activate it and have her die. So she starts with 2 on the very first turn that you play her, and you have to activate that 5 more times to get to 7. And then on the 6th, you can use her ultimate ability. It's not worth it, but okay, if you're playing Elf Tribal, you're going to get a lot out, but it's so niche, and you can't technically have this like as a commander. It's inside the deck, and pretty much you're going to have the Nisa's Chosen inside the deck. It takes up too much slots, and there are elves that do all of these abilities better than she does. So I don't know. I know that they're trying to go with something unique here and trying to build around a planeswalker being like tribal based, but it failed miserably. No one has ever really played the Nisha Ravine card in any format that I can recall. So that is my number 9. Hey, we got some comments. Jake, yes, thank you. Glad to be back. I will hopefully have more episodes soon. Night shift, new job, busy happens. And Marco, yo, what's up, buddy? I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. See a couple of planeswalkers that just no one ever plays. All right, so let's jump back in. Number 9, Nisha Ravine. Let me go ahead and move forward to number 8. So again, this isn't in any particular order. These are just the 10 that I dug up from my personal research. But my number 1 is really my number 1. That's the only caveat there. Next one is Calyx, Destiny's Hand. So in Theros Beyond Death, they decided to introduce the concept of a manufactured planeswalker. Apparently, the gods built their own planeswalker. And this guy has no story at all. Nothing happens to this guy. This is like a nothing planeswalker that adds no value to the story. But okay, let's set all that aside and just look at the card itself. So Calyx is a 4 to cast 4 loyalty planeswalker. Not bad. Plus 1, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them. Put that card in your hand. Put the rest near bottom, on the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so he is built around looking for enchantments. Great. -3, exile target creature or enchantment you don't control. So he has removal, but it says that you exile a creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you control leaves the battlefield, which means that as you choose an opponent's creature or enchantment, you also need a legal target on your end that is an enchantment. So his ability has requirements. Not only does it drop him down to 1 loyalty, which will just make him like just a little flick away from dying, he has a requirement, and it's something that you don't just readily have available. Like when you put him down, you need to make sure that prior to that you have an enchantment, and then you need to protect the enchantment, which is just very odd. And his last ability, I personally really like his last ability. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is basically another card called Replenish, but Replenish costs as much as Calyx casting cost. You might as well just play Replenish. And then, it is a sorcery, it is a one-time use, okay, But you see, for Calyx as well, you pretty much need to operate or keep him alive for 4 turns in order for you to be able to use that ultimate ability. But in the meantime, you aren't really able to use his ability unless you have an enchantment that can be targeted. So imagine if you use his ability once and you happen to have an enchantment, okay, you have to build up his loyalty again in order for you to use that removal ability. And by that time, if you lost the first enchantment, the exiled creature is back anyway. So it's some really, really bad removal. And that's why he ends up as my number 8. Calyx Destiny's Hand. I personally wouldn't mind having a copy of this just for the sake of collecting. Like I do have a collection of planeswalkers in a binder, but I wouldn't play this at all. Next is another new character introduced in Kaldheim that has proven to be pretty useless. This is Nico Harris, number 7. Nico is a planeswalker that was introduced in the Kaldheim set that brings in a very interesting mechanic. He is like the second planeswalker to have an X in his casting cost, but the X has no bearing to his loyalty. Instead, he costs 1 white and 2 blue plus X. Let's assume that you paid 0. So he is a 3 to cast, 3 loyalty planeswalker, which is okay, but he enters the battlefield with X shard tokens. These are enchantments that basically will allow you to scry and draw cards. So you can pump in a lot of mana into him if you want a bunch of shards. Okay. So you're already investing quite a lot of mana into this, and then the shards themselves require you to also pay in order to sacrifice them and draw a card. Now let's go to his abilities. +1. Up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Whenever that creature deals damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. So you made something you own unblockable, but then you put it back in your hand, which means you have to cast it again. You have to pay the cost all over again. It would have been better if it just like flickered or something, that it just left the game and came back in and you got pretty much another enter the battlefield effect. No, this goes to your hand. You gotta cast it again. Ah, okay, that's bad. Next, -1. Nico Harris deals 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn. Another planeswalker with a conditional effect. Okay, every turn you draw a card, if you didn't draw any more, he just deals 1 damage. 1 damage isn't really going to do a lot in terms of protecting him, and you also lost the loyalty from him. So he got weaker, and unless you drew a hell lot of cards that turn, what exactly is he going to do for you? Nothing. And then for his ultimate ability, it's another -1, and he just makes a shard. So basically, he is all about the shards, and the shards aren't even worth it. You might as well just have clue tokens. Okay, the clue tokens have the benefit, don't have the benefit of scry. It's just a draw. Okay, but you don't have to go through so many hoops just to produce it. There's no other creature or effect, enchantment, or artifact that makes shard tokens. It's just all on this guy. And what they do isn't even that good. He can't even protect himself because he can only target tapped creatures, which means that they have already attacked. And then he can make stuff unblockable, but then you have to cast them all over again. He is just mechanically all over the place and just works against you. Like I play blue white and I can see some of the merits of his abilities, but there are cards that do a better job at it than this guy. So it's bad. Avoid like the plague. Number 7, Nico Harris. Crap. Let's move on to the next one. Number 6 is a little bit of a heartbreaking moment for me. I really love this character. The War of the Spark version that they created for her is one of my favorite Planeswalker designs because it incorporates like two of my favorite abilities. But they made a third one when they made Narset of the Ancient Way. Narset started as a creature that progressed into a planeswalker that was okay that became started as a dual color and then became a mono blue planeswalker, and then they brought her back to three colors. But this version of Narset is not good at all. Let me explain why. Narset of the Ancient Ways cost 4, and 3 of those are colored mana. So it's a little harder to get her down, and you get 4 loyalty, which isn't that great for like the investment you put in. Now let's go with the abilities. Plus 1, you gain 2 life, you get a blue, a red, or a white, and you can only spend that mana on non-creature spells. How does that help you? You already paid 4 to put her down, and she'll give you 1 mana that might be able to help you cast something and gain 2 life. It doesn't really matter. Minus 2, draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, Narset deals damage equal to the card's converted mana cost to a creature or planeswalker. So, she hurts herself for 2, just so that you can remove a potential attacker, but it also highly depends on the casting cost or converted mana cost of the card you're discarding. You hurt your walker and you threw away a card. It doesn't really help, to be honest. It doesn't, the protection here is really bad. It's not as bad as the previous ones that had these weird conditions, but you need to make sure that you have at least something of a casting cost that can take out a potential attacker. And what if you wanted that card? What if you needed it? And it's not even worth throwing away. Now, the final ability here is an emblem, which is a perfect ultimate because it doesn't go away. So for minus 6, which means that you need Narset to be around for at least 3 turns for this to happen, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the emblem deals 2 damage to any target. Okay. In a game of 20 life, in a one-on-one situation, that's really late already for like just dealing 2 damage around. In a game of Commander, it's useless. So Narset has been such an amazing character, starting from the Khans of Tarkir block and progressing into like different versions, and even like ascending from a creature to a planeswalker, but then coming into a later set in Ikoria Lair of Behemoths. This is like a fall from grace that was just really bad. So my number 6, unfortunately, like I really like the character, but this card design sucks. Narset of the Ancient Way. Number 5 on my list is another character that was a mainstay in Magic that I don't know who, well, he made the ultimate sacrifice, but not before coming out with one terrible ass card. This is Gideon, Champion of Justice. I will preface that this also comes with some personal bias because this card, upon release, I actually got a copy of it in my. I bought a booster box and I got one, and people really had so much hype built around it, and just within 2 or 3 days, its price plummeted and put me at a loss. So I personally just had a terrible experience with this card, but Let's set that aside. We got Gideon, the martyr of all the planeswalkers, and let's go through his abilities. He is a 4 to cast, 4 loyalty, mono white planeswalker. So there's a couple of things working against him, but fine, he has 4 loyalty. Plus 1, so he is guaranteed to get 1 loyalty every time. Put a loyalty counter on Gideon, Champion of Justice, for each creature target opponent controls. Not bad. So he gets 1. If you happen to have if your opponent has like 2 or 3 creatures, he gets 3 more. Great. So he can actually ramp up his loyalty pretty fast. But it doesn't really do anything because once they attack him, he's just going to lose all that loyalty anyway. So it's really a nothing ability. Next, for 0, until end of turn, Gideon, Champion of Justice, becomes an indestructible human soldier creature with power and toughness equal to the number of loyalty counters on him. Assuming he survives, okay, he is still a planeswalker and prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn, which makes him a pretty good aggressive attacker, I suppose. So as long as maybe you can drop him in that he can stay alive for a while, he could become a pretty good indestructible blocker that takes no damage. But oftentimes that's not going to happen. His final ability, when you read it, sounds epic. For minus 15, exile all other permanents, which means that Gideon will be the only permanent left behind. And then you can start turning him into a soldier and then, punching face. But in order for him to stay alive, you need him to be at least at 16 loyalty, and then he'll go down to 1. He'll become a 1/1 attacker. And remember, all permanents are gone, even your lands. You are shooting yourself in the foot when you use this ability. All other players are affected by this. Yes, it is a global catastrophic event, but it could also set you back so bad, and all that you might have left is just like a 1/1 or a 2/2 human soldier every turn. Big deal. By the time you deal enough significant damage, maybe your opponent might have gotten back up into the game, or might have even prepared for what you are going to do. So he has a nothing ability, an ability that might make him into an attacker, but is so conditional. And then just not even a bullet to the foot, a rocket launcher to the foot. You could hurt yourself so bad by losing all of your permanents. Everything just gets exiled. Your opponent hurts, and so do you. So Gideon, Champion of Justice, looked really good when he was initially released and spoiled, but just turned out to be a horrendous card. So that's my number 5. Moving to number 4, we look at another new planeswalker that just bombed because of a lack of support. So this one is maybe a little bit of I should throw a caveat in here because the next Commander Legends set is going to be based in Baldur's Gate. So there might be additional support for this character. But number 4 goes to Eliwick Tumblestrum, a 4 to cast, 4 loyalty mono green planeswalker that reads as follows. +1, venture into the dungeon. So this is what I was talking about, that new dungeons might be introduced in later sets with the Commander Legends and Baldur's Gate scheduled for sometime late this year. Maybe there'll be new dungeons that might be more interesting. But for now, there's only 3. They ain't that great, and it takes a while for them to do anything. Next, -2. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it in your hand. If it just happens to be legendary, you also gain 3 life, and then the rest go to the bottom of your library in a random order. Okay, so basically you can maybe use her twice to go look for creatures, and then she'll die. For 4, you might as well have just played something that just flat out goes look for a card or a creature that you need. So looking at your top six isn't that great. And plus, you might be needing some other cards from there, and you're going to miss out, and it's going to go underneath your library. And when are you going to get it back again? It doesn't really feel like it's worth it. There are other cards that do a better job that can even like just go get what you're looking for and put it directly in your hand. Play Worldly Tutor. It's one green, it's an instant. You get the creature you want, it goes to the top of your library. It's so much better. All right. Then now, her ultimate ability, -7, which means that she needs to be alive for at least like 4 turns for you to make this happen. You get an emblem that reads creatures you control have trample, haste, and get +2/+2 for each different named dungeon you've completed. So they get trample and haste, which is fine. But the +2/+2 is dependent on you completing dungeons. And green doesn't even really have a lot of dungeon support. The only colors that really have dungeon support are, well, black has a lot, and blue and white, but the blue and white ones are also some terrible cards. There were recent videos that are like for the worst commanders of 2021 that came out, and the blue white venture and dungeon mechanic commanders all came up because there's only like how many cards that really support this ability, and some of them are just garbage. And then now you have to move it over to green, it's even worse. So maybe there will be an improvement for Eliwick, but as of now, it's not worth playing at all. Mono green has nothing to help or work around the whole dungeon mechanic and shouldn't really have to. Her ability to look for creature cards is okay, but there are other planeswalkers like Vivian Reed that even does a better job at it. So just play Vivian instead. Don't bother with this. So number 4, Eliwick Tumblestrum. Garbage. Steaming hot garbage. Hey, a comment. Oh, yes, caveats about the episode. Yes, so I did mention it at the start. So this is just my personal top 10. This is not based on any format at all, and I am not doing any of the Planeswalker deck printings of any of these Planeswalkers because those cards are really meant as an introductory version of the Planeswalkers and they're terrible. So I'm just focused on normal Planeswalkers that come out in every set and the ones that just mechanically do not work. As I've already covered in some of the previous numbers, some of them have some hoops and mechanics that just doesn't make any sense. They can't protect themselves, or that they're not worth the cost. So there are going to be like 3 more examples just really to prove the point here. And let's go ahead and go to number 3 so that I can show you. This card I actually was personally excited to try out, and when I did, I realized just how bad it was. And this is Kaia Orzhov Usurper. So Kaia was introduced in a previous set and was introduced as a ghost killer or ghost assassin that somehow, took over the Orzhov syndicate. Kaia is a 3 to cast, 3 loyalty planeswalker, which is not bad. A lot of the planeswalkers that run between 3 to 4 mana are usually I would say, playable planeswalkers. But let's go over Kaia's abilities. +1, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least 1 creature card was exiled this way. So, if let's say you only had 1 legal target, okay, you get 1 loyalty and you could potentially gain 2 life. Hooray! What does that get you? Really nothing. Next, -1, exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. So Kaia can take out 1 to cast permanents. Okay, She can kill a Sol Ring. She can take out a Mana Vault, um, a Llanowar Elf. There's so many one to cast permanents really that could be targets. But for the cost of three and really running at sorcery speed, is it even really worth it? Is this how she defends herself? She's defending herself from one to cast permanents? All you have to do is put something a little larger than that, and she can't do anything about it. So she pretty much can't, she's defenseless against anything that costs more than one converted mana cost. That is some terrible defense for somebody who usurped and took over an entire syndicate. That is some crap defense. Now let's go to her ultimate ability. -5. Kaia Orzhov Usurper deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So, to get to -5, you have to keep her around for 3 turns. And okay, for every time that you use her +1 ability, which you're going to probably do twice, you can get 4 cards out of somebody's graveyard. And then when you use her ultimate ability, so you're dealing 4 damage and gaining 4 life and killing her in the process. That is really, really bad. That is not worth 3 turns of running her. She doesn't offer any advantage other than maybe gaining you life and maybe defending against a graveyard build that you're, if you're not playing against an, if your opponent doesn't care about his graveyard, then it's really bad. It's crap. So this is an example of a card that looked like it had an interesting design. Exiling a one to cast permanent was one of the reasons why I wanted to run this card, because in Commander or in certain formats there are really a lot of powerful one to cast cards. But you know what? I quickly realized that a lot of the one to cast cards were not permanents. They are mostly instants and sorceries. This doesn't care or have anything to do with them. So it becomes really useless really fast. You can run so many other better cards than Kaia Orzhov Usurper. Now we go to my top 2. Number 2 goes to another new character that really had nothing going on. So they killed Gideon, they killed Elspeth, Ajani disappeared, and they didn't really have a white planeswalker. Like, okay, they had Teo, but he doesn't really have anything. So like they were trying to maybe create a brand new like white planeswalker that might be able to take Gideon's place, and they came up with Basri Kit. Basically, they decided to just stretch the Amonkhet lore and create a planeswalker from that plane. And what we got here is Basri, who is a 3 to cast 3 loyalty mono white planeswalker. His abilities read as follows. +1. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. It gains indestructible this turn. Great. He helps attackers. Number 2, our second ability is -2. Whenever one or more non-token creatures attack this turn, create that many 1/1 white creature tokens tapped and attacking. So he encourages you to attack and then rewards you by giving you a bunch of 1/1s that might connect and hit your opponent. Okay, that might be good for like maybe one final swing because it counts each non-token attacker. So if you attack with 5 creatures, you also get 5 1/1s. Okay. If your opponent doesn't give a crap, that's just 5 damage. That's not really worth it. And then it leaves Basri at just 1 loyalty left. So he's again just like a little flick away from death. which makes him pretty useless afterwards. Then his ultimate. -6. You get an emblem with at the beginning of combat on your turn, so it's only your turn. Create a 1/1 white soldier token and then put a +1/+1 on each creature you control. So, okay, he starts building up your army, making them bigger and bigger every turn by increments of 1. So it's not even worth it because you got to keep him alive for 4 turns of just using his first ability in order for that to happen. He can't defend himself. He is built around making your attackers bigger and then giving you 1/1 additional attackers, but nothing about it is going to help you keep him alive. So there is just no defense system in place here that he will die instantly. So why even bother running this guy? If you're maybe playing a soldier tribal, but you know what? There are other cards that also produce a crap load of soldier tokens, which might just be better than this. It takes way too long for it to get anything going, and he is guaranteed to die in like 2 turns. It is so not worth your time. This one is a dumpster fire of a card that I don't know what they were thinking. Character wise, they haven't done anything with him, too. But okay, we're not really focused on the characters, we're focused more on the card. And this was dead on arrival. Really, when this came out, no one was interested. The character wasn't fleshed out. Okay, they could fix that with the future cards, but the abilities of this is just so bad. Dumpster fire. All right, so let's move to my number one. This one is actually a pretty quick default answer. If you ask any Magic the Gathering player who is familiar with, at least some of the history of Planeswalker cards or have been playing for a while, one name will always come up. It is by far the worst Planeswalker that has ever been printed or conceived, really, and that is Timbalt the Fiend-Blooded. Okay, so Timbalt, it was the very first to cast Planeswalker that they built. He is like one of the cheapest Planeswalkers. They have thus made some other ones that are a little better, like or something like even like Renin 6 is amazing. But what we're looking at here is 2 red for a 2 loyalty Planeswalker. So this guy comes out faster than any other Planeswalker in the game. But his abilities are just words can't begin to describe how useless this guy is. But okay, let's go ahead and just go over it. +1, draw a card. Alright, great, card advantage. Then discard a card at random, which means that you might even lose the card you got or something that you've been meaning to keep. Why did they have to make it random? What does randomization have anything to do with this guy? This is a human who like sold his soul and became a demon and then rose to becoming a planeswalker. That I don't get where random comes in. That is he supposed to be some kind of trickster? But if that's the case, why is he tricking you? Why isn't he doing this to his opponent? So it's dumbfoundingly stupid. Why does his abilities hurt you as the player who decided to run him in your deck? Now, his next ability, -4, which means that you can't even use it without keeping him alive for at least 3 turns. That's 3 draws and 3 random discards. Timbalt the Fiend-Blooded deals damage equal to the number of cards in target player's hand to that player. So this is an old card known as Stormseeker. You hurt your opponent for how many cards they have in their hand. So it doesn't even hit creatures, which means Timbalt can't protect himself at all. He is just an open meat bag that can just be punched out of the game immediately. And then finally, his ultimate, -6, which means that you have to keep him around for at least 5 turns to get this used. Gain control of all creatures until end of turn. Untap them, they gain haste. This is pretty much the card Insurrection. That, you know what? I would rather just run Insurrection instead of this guy because you're never gonna get the -6 with Tibalt. He has no defense. The randomization just hurts you so much. The -4 isn't even worth it unless your opponent has a significant amount of cards in his hand. So you're the one discarding, but then now you're gonna punish your opponent for having a lot of cards. It's so ass backwards. I don't know what they were going with here. I mean, points for trying to be creative, but to what means? What was this card meant to do? It's really, really, really bad. So much so that this card got a white border treatment and was reprinted as part of an April Fool's secret layer that Magic the Gathering released last year. That card actually costs a lot because there's no white bordered planeswalkers except for Tibalt. But it was really put in an April Fool's secret layer box set because this is just one of the worst cards that they've ever designed and is still the top one worst or most terrible planeswalker they've printed to date. I mean, there are some other ones that could have made this list. The uncommon walkers that were introduced in War of the Spark are pretty bad, but they're uncommon. They're meant to be powered down. The planeswalkers that come in the pre-constructed planeswalker decks are like 6 to cast and are they they they, they won't survive. They will die, or that you can only put them down in the late game and they're not even worth it. Like they're really meant for slow introductory magic. This was put in the game with the intent of it being something that players would use, and everyone just looked at it and just collectively just laughed at the face of Wizards of the Coast for making something so bad. So, you know what? That pretty much brings me to the end of today's episode for my top 10 terrible planeswalkers. Again, this is a personal list. If I missed any planeswalker that you felt should have been on the list, please comment and share. I would love to hear what you guys have to add. For Ron, Jake, Marco, Anna, for those of you who are watching the live stream tonight, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back, and I am looking forward to producing more Magic the Gathering content for you guys. Till then, keep gaming.